Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Michael Harding podcast for the 24th of September in 2021. From a little room in a house in Donegal, I need me vitamin D tablets, me vitamin C tablets, and all the other ones. My mother used to say, I dread the winter, and I had no sympathy for her. Because I was young and insensitive, and it just amazes me how insensitive I was as a young fella. It amazes me also how unconscious I was. Do you know, like, I was going round it like I was in a dream. And the only thing about that which I pay attention to is I might still be going round in a dream. In fact, the whole of life might be a dream. I'll not go there now yet. It's too early in this conversation to be getting profound. But talking about my mother used to say, I dread the winter. And now I find myself saying the same thing. And for me, there's a real choice involved in this. And I'm not doing this, for my listeners. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for myself. I loved the summer and the long evenings, and the whole thing was just beautiful. But you come to September, and particularly that moment of the equinox where, it's exactly 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. And then once you go over the 21st of September, there's a little bit longer of night time than there is of daytime. And that immediately begins to affect you, and it will affect you right through until February. So it's a long road. And if you dread it, you can put yourself in a kind of a, do you know the way you go to the dentist and you say, I dread the dentist, and then you're sitting in the waiting room and your body is so tense that you'd nearly, break your arm if you moved it suddenly. You're just rigid with fear because you've told yourself a narrative about going to the dentist. I dread the dentist. This is the moment I should be dreading. Here I am. I'm dreading it. And it's like you just lock yourself into that. And then you go into the dentist and you're expecting them to find, a couple of teeth that need to be filled or something. And she says, you're fine. Or maybe what used to really affect me and what I dreaded in the dentist was the cleaning of the teeth. Oh, once or twice I got that done and I just couldn't bear the scraping they were doing with kind of a little, like it felt like a fork scraping the plaque off your teeth. And it was very, very unpleasant, and I was really dreading it the next time I went. And I probably even put off going to the dentist because I was dreading it. And then I got in, and I sat laid down in that kind of strange seat that they strap you into. And she turns on a little machine, and I realised there's no more scraping. It's all bzzz, bzzz. And it was grand. There was nothing to dread. But I had spent all that time in the waiting room suffering. And I think that's something you can avoid. Instead of looking at the winter during September and thinking, oh, I'm going to dread this, it's going to be awful. There's ways around that. Now, if part of your winter is being cold, or part of your winter is being hungry, they're really difficult ones to get around. I don't have any answer to that. As I say it, I'm just reflecting on the fact that maybe not me or you, but there are people who really dread the winter simply for physical reasons. That they'll have to spend extra money on coal or their heating bills will go up. My heating bill goes up and I do sometimes worry about it, but I don't worry about it as much as I did 20 years ago when I hadn't a penny to me name. But it is worth thinking at this time of year how there are people, whether it's you, me, or somebody else who's not just happened to be listening to this, but there are people who dread the winter, and they dread it because if it's going to be cold, or if they're delicate and they're afraid of getting a flu, or their electricity is going to be too high. I think I'm talking about the way we all dread the winter based on loneliness. I find my life is an endless struggle to sort of keep upright, to keep standing up and relating to people in a normal way. And I find that I took that for granted when I was young, and as I get older, I get more feeble and more frail, and I realise it's tricky when you get old. You know, you're actually making a serious effort just to be normal in the way that you used to be normal. And what's really difficult about that is you look to the future and you say, well, this isn't going to get really much better because I'll probably get older. Everybody else gets older, so I'll probably get older. And if I get older, I'll probably get more feeble. So they're difficult things to be dealing with. And I think people deal with them even in their 50s and 60s. You know, the anxiety about aging comes to everybody. There's also people who, because they have a particular disability, they may, need assistance. They might have a person who comes in, a daily help. They might have a wheelchair to keep them mobile. There's all sorts of people who are vulnerable, whose dread of the winter is sharper than mine or yours. And it's worth keeping that in mind too, when I'm talking, But the way that I'm talking about dreading the winter, I suppose, is the way it affects everybody. Whether you're able-bodied, whether you're not, whether you're young or old, whether you're mentally healthy or like me, fragile, all the kind of spread of different types of human beings, whether you are affluent and have a beautiful house and 5 toilets, or whether you have a cracked window and no double glazing, and you're worried about the money you might be spending on coal, and worried about the fact that you can't use coal, and worried about the fact that the electricity heaters sometimes use an enormous amount of electricity, and then your bills are huge. So I'm talking about the way that dreading winter crosses all those different people. And we all just can get into one room and be united and in agreement that we dread winter. Even if you got people from a different political persuasion than yourself. If you sat down people in loyalist quarters of Belfast and in Republican or nationalist quarters of Belfast who were not hugely wealthy, and they were dependent on social services and dependent on various kind of schemes to subsidize their income, put them all in a room and say, hands up, who dreads winter? And they'd be all in agreement. They mightn't be in agreement about anything else. They mightn't agree about whether Michael D. Higgins should go to Armagh, or whether the Battle of the Boyne should be commemorated, or whether this or whether that. They'd all have different views. But if you said to them all, do you dread the winter? Every single hand would go up and everybody would say, aye, we do. It's a very universal thing. Imagine people out in refugee camps, the ones that we rarely think about, on the fringes of our empire, if you like, on the fringes of our society, in Afghanistan or in Syria or other places in the Middle East where there are refugee camps. And the cold weather comes to those places too. The snow comes sometimes to Cavan, but comes to Syria as well. It comes to Afghanistan. It comes to all those remote corners where people are living in refugee camps, very often or maybe mostly because their societies and cultures have been destroyed by wars that we as Europeans have been involved in. And they dread winter. And the people who try to get to Britain and end up in various places in France, on the coast, in illegal camps, trying to cross the channel, I'm sure they dread winter as well. You know, I start off sitting looking out the window here at the hydrangea bobbing away and the wind blowing and the mist coming in from the sea. And I'm thinking I dread the winter. And then I think of all the other people that I can hear about by pressing a button on my phone and listening to the radio. And I think, yeah, well, I may dread winter, but it's nothing compared to the way some other people dread winter. I'll move on to what you could do positively about it, because for me, I love the equinox of September, and I have to say the 23rd of September was yesterday. Now, the longer nights have begun. The longer nights of autumn and winter have begun, but it was such an amazing, beautiful day in Donegal yesterday. A pet day, you might call it. A day which felt more like the end of August. And the slanting sun was just so sharp and clear on the coastline, on the beach, and on the shoreline around Dunlow. And I went for a big long walk and I enjoyed myself. I thought, my goodness, what a beautiful evening. And when I look to the autumn, I start on this day of the equinox, 21st of September, and I tell myself, I don't go into it unconsciously. I say to myself, we're going into winter now. And so I find a new track. And the track again is moving towards midwinter, which is, okay, it's 3 months away. It's a long time away in some senses. But there are lovely milestones along that road. And all the meditation that I do is towards darkness, into darkness, trying to kind of find a beautiful space within the darkness. Because the darkness is like, it's the emptiness. It's like, when it's dark, you can't see. You have to surrender to the darkness and not be afraid of it. And let it happen. And have markers along the way, stepping stones, which to me are moments of prayer, moments of actual celebration that in the darkness we find light. In the darkness we find wisdom. Going into the dark with your hands open. It's like walking over the cliff blindfolded. It's like taking a risk. And so instead of dreading winter, you can use this time very prayerfully. And to be honest, I think that's what a lot of the monks, if you go back 6th century to 12th century, right? I think that what probably helped the culture to awaken in such a deeply spiritual and artistic way was simply the fact of the light. Because we're so high above the equator, the twilight is longer and slower, and as you go into the winter, the drama of the difference between midsummer and midwinter is enormous. And it's almost like the perfect balance. It's the Goldilocks space, because if you're down further close to the equator, it feels like the sudden change from day to night is too quick to have any drama emotionally to it. And you're getting very little difference between the seasons in relation to the light. If you go way up to Iceland or somewhere else, the difference is so different that you don't get the subtle play of the Celtic twilight in the same way. In Ireland, it's a beautiful sense of moving from the light to the darkness, and from the darkness to the light. It's a constant metaphor of something deeper. I was listening to somebody last night, and they were saying if you look at the world, or if you look at reality, you look at the cosmos mechanically, then the other ways of looking at it begin to diminish. When you look at things mechanically, scientifically, the other ways of looking at it diminish. We lose some sense of the wisdom way to look at the universe, the loving way to look at the universe. It diminishes when we look at it mechanically. And then when we look at it mechanically, the day and the night is just like, we don't care about it anymore. We have no emotion about it. We don't see what it is. It's a metaphor for a deeper level of reality. We are going into the dark. It's like just a cosmic ritual. It's enormous and mysterious. It's a wonderful thing. Going into the dark. Not because you're dreading it, but because you're using each moment of it as some kind of ritual, some kind of procession, some kind of prayer. You're feeling it at a deeper level than just the mechanical level. You're feeling it at some kind of emotional, spiritual, call it what you want, I don't know, some deep hidden, I'll tell you the word, at the heart level. You're feeling it with your heart. And we're back to that word, the heart, the nous, the way that you kind of relate to the world, not intellectually but emotionally, spiritually. And that's the way I go into the winter. The dread comes from your brain. The dread comes from the fear of the unknown, the fear of darkness, the fear of difficulties that will arise. And there is something about love that transcends that. There's something about, you don't dread anything about your relationship with your beloved or with your children or your parents. You don't dread it because it's going to be difficult. If you're going to meet them in the hospital, you don't say, well, I'm dreading this, because you transcend it all the time with love. You transcend it simply because of the power and the strength of the love between you. For better or for worse, you endure stuff. And the enduring of it isn't bad. It actually becomes a kind of a way that it strengthens the relationship, the bond. Per tenebras ad lucem, through the darkness comes light. So that when it comes to the winter, there's a way that you can use the winter as a ritual of moving towards the darkness in a celebratory way, in a way that's using it as a metaphor. This is like, I'm going into the darkness, and it's getting longer nights every day, longer nights, shorter days, but I'm walking in it like I'm trusting it. Like I'm kind of experiencing some real presence in this moment of darkness. And then when you're out walking at night, or you're standing outside the door and you're looking at the darkness, you're feeling it like, not like something that you should dread, but something that is mysterious. That's the bit of the universe that you don't know. But your heart knows it. Your heart makes a pathway through the darkness. So that's all I wanted to say today, to share with you, because it's my feeling. It's always my feeling at this time of year, that if you make a conscious turn around in your mind, if you respond to the way that the whole light and darkness changes at the equinox, and you do this in your mind and in your heart and in your life, you say, it's like putting on your vest, I put on a vest, actually. All summer I wouldn't be wearing a vest, just have a shirt on. But 2 days ago, I says, it's time for the vest. There's a whole lot of ways we do change around and face into the winter. Having school children is a huge way that it happens. But what I'm saying is that if you take this turnaround internally, if you live the big shift on the inside, and you kind of have a moment of silence with yourself, and you say, from now, from this equinox towards midwinter, I will go into this darkness, into this mystery, into the places in the universe and the cosmos that I don't know, but I know with my heart. And I will so trust my heart. And so every time I'm experiencing darkness, whether it's in the evenings or in the early morning, I'll experience it almost like tenderness, almost like I don't know or recognize this hand, but this hand is tender. There is something in this darkness that is present to me that is really, really good. And after that, the only thing I wanted to do is share a little reading with you from Chest Pain. It's called Paper Lanterns, and I'll do it in the next section, the next little podcast. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you join me in the adventure of finding a pathway towards midwinter from here. Thank you for being here, and bye-bye.